Thank you so much, ma'am. I'd like to welcome you on the Positive Wellbeing Association platform. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation.
I am delighted to be here.
Thank you. It's an honor to obviously be interviewing yourself. And I think, first of all, just to sort of analyze the whole sort of aspect of seriously happy homes, could you first of all initiate, how would you summarize a review of positive design psychology within the home environment for children as well as adults, please?
Sure. So positive design psychology, when it comes to the space, to our surroundings and our environment, is all about making sure that our space it feels safe, it feels nurturing, and then it feels aligned with who we are, not only who we are, but who we're trying to become. Too often our spaces are neglected. They're stuck in the past. They're stuck in somebody else's expectation of how we should be living or where we should be living, instead of really connecting to who we are deeply and who we want to become. And when it comes to children, it's exactly the same journey as it is for adults, except for that they don't get to be quite as involved and intentional about it because they're children. But it's the same thing. We want to create spaces that feel safe, first and foremost. But then when we can level up from there, we want to create spaces that have some uniqueness, that reflect their personality and their habits, right? So if you want to reduce the struggle that happens with somebody's environment. So if you have a child who likes to study at a desk, then you create a desk space within their surroundings. But if you have a child who's always going to flop on the floor or on the bed to study, then you create that surrounding to nurture their own habits instead of fighting against them. So safe, unique, and fitting with the person who's in the space. And then for children and for adults, truly, it's the same thing. It's also about making sure that our spaces reflect our family values, so that it's not just the words that we say that are helping kids know who we are as a family, but also what they see around them and how that reflects our values when it comes to how we treat other people, how we treat each other, how we treat other people's belongings, how we treat the entire planet. All of those things can all be tied up in positive design psychology when it comes to our happy homes.
Thank you so much for that. It's really nice to know that, the core elements, such as obviously having a safe environment, but having that uniqueness, best fit sort of environment for that unique individual, and obviously nurturing it and cultivating a meaningful environment makes a lot of difference for the child as well as the adult. So thank you so much for that explanation. How would you say positive psychology practitioners could actually practice the positive happy home notion optimally for their interactions with young children and adults?
So it's interesting because a lot of times when psychologists are working with their clients, generally speaking, they're not going to be in the home environment of their client. I'm sure that happens occasionally, but mostly it's going to be in an office or some kind of a caretaking environment. So first it comes down to asking good questions and to even come up with the idea of asking about somebody's home environment. And people will ask about home environment, but they usually mean like, how are your family relationships or things like that. But it can be, if you ask questions about the physical environment, it can be very illuminating. So coming up with good questions like, if somebody's having trouble sleeping, say, how do you feel about your bedroom? Do you have good light control on your windows? Do you have good noise control? Do you feel like when you walk into your bedroom, it's safe and calm and nurturing and it looks like a space you want to be in? Or is it just a mess and it feels like everywhere it's a to-do list, right? That's not going to help with that restfulness. So whatever the goal is, whatever they're working on when it comes to the psychology, the space, the physical space, can either be supporting those goals or it can be an obstacle, something that's actually getting in the way of those goals. So asking good questions and then just recognizing that it's amazing how much a tiny shift in our physical environment can create momentum to create shifts in energy and in all of the things that come up in our lives. Just a fresh coat of paint. It's sort of like the same feeling you get when you get a haircut or you get a new outfit that just makes you feel amazing. That physical change makes you go, I wonder what else could be possible. It gives you hope without having to go always back to when I was 7 and this thing happened with my family and all the stuff that can feel really heavy sometimes.
Okay, I mean that's an absolute beautiful account of how obviously positive psychology psychologists or people in the sort of psychology domain can actually be uh, have a more of a goal orientated questioning method, meaning they can actually inquire about the child or the adult's environment and see what obviously changes or adaptability that environment could actually invest in to actually make it a better sort of home for the child or the adult to uh, actually live in. And I like the fact that yes, sleep issues are obviously, they're so underrated, and sleeping is a big issue sometimes for adults as well as children as well. And it's nice to know, to have that bit of inkling and bit of intuition of just having their sort of bedroom space sorted out, just their sort of mindset, and having a bit of an in-depth knowledge of all of that can actually make a big difference to such a big health issue such as sleep deprivation. So having that connection between your surroundings and your health is an ultimate positive goal that I think positive psychology practitioners can actually take on board what you've said and really sort of run with that, because I feel that that's, you're an expert in your field. You've been doing this for a very long time, so how the work, how the sort of home environment can really work for the individual, and how it can really sort of motivate and really sort of give them that sort of boost in motivation and boost in self-esteem and self-growth and everything. So that's fantastic to hear that there are practical skills that they can adopt to actually achieve that, accomplish that. Please, can you elaborate on your key points of the happy home notion in context of the nature-nurture debate? Being a fellow psychologist, it is an ongoing debate, nature-nurture. But to what extent, from your experience and obviously the way you've actually dealt with your clients and everything, do you feel that the nature-nurture debate really sort of formalizes in your sort of day-to-day activities and day-to-day sort of interaction with clients, would you say?
Sure. I think the nature versus nurture debate is a funny one. I might even call it a silly one, because it's not like we're one or the other. We are absolutely both nature and nurture. That's one of the amazing things about being human. The key is that we can't do a lot to affect our nature. I mean, it's kind of ingrained. But we can do a ton to affect the things that come up under nurture, right? And it comes down to the idea of sphere of influence, or the serenity prayer, right? Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change and the courage to change the things that I can. And this has to do with courage to change the things that I can. So yes, there are things we can't change about ourselves or even about our surroundings, but there is so much that we actually have control over. And if we just take a minute to think about what is something I can actually influence, and especially, again, in our surroundings, maybe it's just a matter of tidying up. Maybe it's just a matter of clearing things off the counter so that you have some mental space that comes from the clarity of seeing not all the clutter around you. So nature versus nurture, it's like, it's not a debate in my mind. It's simply well, where are we going to focus our attention? Why don't we focus it on the things that we can affect? And that is the nurture side of this whole conversation.
Yeah, brilliant. So basically, you're saying that it's an amalgamation of both things, nature as well as nurture. So it's nice to see that obviously after such a sort of momentum sort of time within psychology, that actually it's good to embrace both things, and that is the way forward. So it's very nice to hear that. Where would you say that the nature nurture debate in obviously establishing the fact that it is a combination of both things, what top three points would you make regarding a child's sort of improvement in their environment and improvement in their self-esteem, and what top three tips would you give for, say, a primary age child? What should you be looking out for, and what should you be nourishing and cultivating for a primary age child?
That's a wonderful question. And, it goes back first to creating that sense of safety and permanence. I remember growing up as a kid, I grew up in the military, so we moved a lot. And every time we would move, my stepmother would have our home set up completely by about 2 weeks after we moved. That meant that very quickly I was able to know that when I made a new friend, I had a place that I could bring them home and feel proud of my space and know that there was that permanence there. So even though our geography was impermanent, that feeling of home was very permanent. And so when we're thinking about what we're creating for our children using our environments, creating that sense of safety, creating that sense of permanence, it doesn't have to be beautiful. The kids don't care if your furniture is expensive or not expensive. In some ways, it can be better to have things that are less expensive so that you're not constantly haranguing on them to be so careful, and they can just be themselves. So creating that sense of safety and permanence is a really important thing, especially in those early years for kids. Letting them have a sense of ownership over their space, and it can start very early, can be a great way to help train them in not only letting their personality shine, but also in dealing with consequence and repercussion. You can let a school-age kid choose the color for the paint color in their room, with the understanding that they're going to have to live with it, as will you, for the next however long you decide. Maybe that's 6 months, maybe that's 6 years. But that sense of, yes, you have ownership, you can choose whatever color you want, or maybe whatever color within this realm, but you're going to have to live with it. It's a great opportunity to teach consequence and responsibility. And then it's also even a great opportunity to teach about budgeting and money skills and life skills, because if a child is showing interest in making some changes to their space, which often happens around adolescence. For me, it was when I was 13. I had a desire to go from that little kid space to kind of having a grown-up space. And you can say, great, we can do that. Here is the budget. You get to shop for these things, and you need to stay within this budget. It teaches them skills that will help them forever in their life.
That's really fantastic to know that obviously autonomy, as well as a safe and permanent space for a child, is really sort of crucial for their early year development. Thank you so much for that. Where do you feel that the future of the happy home concept is leading us towards a positive well-being for all?
Oh, okay. I think it has to do with two things. First, it's that I think we spend a lot of time worrying about other people's environments and what they're doing, right? And so taking this conversation back to our sphere of influence means that we'll stop focusing on what other people should be doing or how other people should be living, and instead we'll pay attention to the mess at our own feet. And by doing that, we can be role models instead of just bossy, obnoxious people telling other people how to live. So by thinking about design psychology and the space around us and what we can influence, it takes the work back home instead of focusing on other people. And then additionally, when we take care of our space, when our space is taking care of us, we can be more rested. We can feel more grounded and assured of who we are, and we can feel like all the work we've been doing is having results, right? Like if you work really, really hard and then you come home to a space that feels like you're still in college, or it's just really shabby, you can wonder why are you doing all this work? But when you do have a space that supports you, then you're rested, you feel anchored, And then you have the resources to go out and make the world a better place, because you aren't wasting those resources just dealing with the stress and emotions that can come from having a space that embarrasses or shames you. So, you know, if you're more rested and you're taking care of your own garden, you're tending your own garden, you're going to be a better citizen of the world.
I love that concept of the whole sort of obviously taking autonomy of your environment, and it is all about creating a home that suits your needs and is unique to that individual. So it's been an absolute pleasure talking to yourself. Thank you so much for those
Yeah.
absolute vital tips. I think for me, I think things that we don't really pay attention to is is that our environment, our living environment, is very imperative to our well-being, and
Mm.
we should spend that time, because you do spend a lot of time within your home space, the garden space, and it should be catered to those sort of top tips that you've actually mentioned. You know, the safety, the perseverance, be have some kind of autonomy over it, and it's got to suit your needs as well.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
it's an absolute amazing concept. Seriously, happy homes. I love the notion of that, and I think that it should be applied for, you know, every single person out there that has children and adults as well, because it's that little aspect and fragment that actually connects us towards a positive well-being for everyone. So thank you so much for your time, and it's much appreciated. Thank you.
It's been a complete pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.